The stars hung silent in the darkness of space, cold and distant like they had been for millions of years. Commander Zeruk sat in his chair on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, watching the screens that showed nothing but empty space. His 3 hearts beat slowly, calmly. This was routine work. He had done it 1,000 times before. The Zathran Dominion was famous across the galaxy for one thing. They could scan any ship and know everything about it. Their technology could see through any shield, measure any weapon, and tell you if you would win or lose a fight before the first shot was fired. Zeruk had been doing this job for 40 years. He had scanned vessels from 200 different species. He knew what to expect. The year was 2347 by human counting. The humans were new to space. They had only met other aliens 50 years ago. Most species in the galaxy thought humans were simple creatures who got lucky. They had some basic ships and acted tough. But everyone assumed they were just children playing with toys they did not fully understand. Zeruk's second officer, a young female named Craven, looked up from her station. Her mandibles clicked twice, which meant she had found something interesting. She spoke in the clicking language of their people, but the ship's computer translated it into standard galactic speech. "Commander, I am detecting a gravitational distortion. Something large is about to drop out of faster-than-light travel." Zeruk nodded. This was normal. Ships traveled between stars by bending space around them. When they slowed down to normal speed, they created ripples that could be detected. He watched his main screen and waited. A moment later, space seemed to tear open. Light bent in strange ways, and then a ship appeared. It was big, maybe 800 meters long. The design was unusual. Most galactic ships were smooth and curved, built for efficiency. This ship looked angry. It had sharp angles and heavy armor plating. Weapons stuck out from its hull like the spines on a dangerous animal. "Identification?" Zeruk asked. Craven worked at her console for a moment. "The ship is broadcasting a standard greeting beacon. It identifies itself as the UESS Indomitable, registry number HD447 belonging to the United Earth Space Service. Classification shows it as a destroyer-class vessel." Zeruk felt curious. A human ship out here in neutral space. The humans kept to themselves mostly, staying in their own small section of the galaxy. What was a human destroyer doing out here? "Run a full tactical scan," he ordered. This was standard procedure when encountering an unknown vessel. The scan would tell them everything. How powerful were the weapons? How strong were the shields? How many crew members were aboard? The Zathran scanning technology was so advanced that it could even detect how much food was stored in the ship's kitchen. The scanning officer, an old veteran named Tolmec, initiated the sequence. Normally, a scan took 30 seconds. The computer would analyze the data and display it in an easy-to-read format. Zeruk would glance at it, note the information in his log, and move on with his patrol. But 30 seconds passed, and the scanning computer was still working. Tolmec's head tilted to one side, which showed confusion among the Zathran people. "Commander, the scan is not completing. The system is requesting more time." "More time?" Zeruk stood up from his chair. In 40 years, he had never heard those words. "The scanners never needed more time." "How much more time?" "Unknown, Commander. The computer keeps finding new layers of data. It is as if the ship has systems within systems within systems." 1 minute passed, then 2. Warning lights began to flash on the tactical console. The computer was working harder than it ever had before. Zeruk could hear the cooling systems in the walls working overtime, trying to keep the processors from overheating. Craven looked worried. "Commander, should we abort the scan?" "The system is showing stress indicators." "No," Zeruk said firmly. "I want to know what is on that ship. Let the scan finish. 3 minutes. 4 minutes." The crew was silent now, watching their instruments with growing concern. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The Zathran scanning technology had been developed over 3,000 years. It had scanned everything from tiny scout ships to massive colony vessels carrying 1,000,000 passengers. It had never taken more than 90 seconds to complete a full analysis. Finally, after 5 minutes and 12 seconds, the computer made a sound. The scan was complete. Zeruk walked to the tactical console and looked at the display. What he saw made his 3 hearts freeze in his chest. The data scrolled across the screen in long columns of numbers and technical specifications. But it was not the data itself that shocked him. It was the conclusion at the bottom. In bright red letters, the computer displayed a message. "Insufficient parameters. Threat assessment, undefined. What does that mean? Zeruk demanded. The computer has parameters for every known ship class in the galaxy. How can it be insufficient? Tolmec's voice was shaking. Commander, I have been a scanning officer for 28 years. I have never seen this message. The computer is saying that it cannot understand what it is seeing. The human ship does not match any known engineering principles. Zeruk leaned closer to the screen, reading the specifications. His eyes grew wider with each line. Hull density was 847% higher than what galactic science said was possible for a mobile vessel. The power output from the reactor was equal to a small sun. The number of redundant systems was insane. Most ships had 3 or maybe 5 backup systems for critical functions. This human destroyer had over 200. The crew complement made no sense either. According to the scan, only 800 beings were aboard. But a ship this size with this many systems should need at least 15,000 crew members to operate properly. And the weapons. The computer's analysis of the weapons made Zeruk's blood run cold. The projected firepower was equal to a heavy battlecruiser. But this was classified as a destroyer. Destroyers were small, fast ships meant for escort duty and patrol work. They were not supposed to carry enough weapons to destroy a small moon. This cannot be accurate, Zeruk said slowly. Run a diagnostic on the scanning array. There must be an error. Creven worked at her station for 30 seconds, then looked up. Commander, I have run 3 full diagnostics. The scanning array is functioning perfectly. All readings are accurate. Behind Zeruk, the weapons officer spoke for the first time. His voice was barely a whisper. Commander, the readings do not make sense. By every measure we have, that ship should be impossible. It should not be able to move. The power requirements alone should tear it apart. But it is sitting out there, clearly functional, clearly operational. Zeruk straightened up and made a decision. He needed answers, and there was only one way to get them. Open a communication channel to the human vessel. A moment later, the main screen changed. A human face appeared. It was a female with dark skin and short black hair. She wore a uniform that was crisp and professional. Her eyes were intelligent and alert. According to the data tag that appeared below her image, she was Captain Maria Chen, commanding officer of the UESS Indomitable. This is Commander Zeruk of the Zathran vessel Eternal Vigilance, he said, speaking slowly in standard galactic language. We detected your arrival and performed a routine scan. I have some questions about your vessel's specifications if you do not mind. Captain Chen smiled. It was a friendly smile, warm and genuine. Of course, Commander. What would you like to know? Zeruk hesitated. How did he phrase this without sounding insulting? Your ship has some unusual characteristics. The power output, the hull density, the redundant systems. These specifications seem very advanced for a destroyer-class vessel. Captain Chen's smile grew wider. Oh, the Indomitable? She's nothing special, really. Just a standard destroyer configuration. We built her at the Mars orbital shipyards about 3 years ago. There are 43 more ships just like her in this sector alone. The bridge of the Eternal Vigilance fell silent. Zeruk felt his 3 hearts begin to beat faster. 43 more ships. 43 more impossibly powerful vessels. Each one defying every rule of galactic engineering. His hands moved automatically, triggering an emergency transmission to Dominion High Command. If what Captain Chen said was true, then every strategic calculation in the galaxy was wrong. The humans were not weak newcomers. They were something else entirely. Something dangerous. Before the transmission could be acknowledged, Craven spoke urgently. Commander, multiple gravitational distortions detected. More ships are arriving. Space tore open in 12 different places. 12 more human warships appeared, forming a loose circle around the Eternal Vigilance. They were all destroyers, all identical to the Indomitable. Each one bristled with weapons. Each one radiated power. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen again. Her smile was gone now. Her voice was cooler, more formal. Commander Zeruk, our sensors detected your deep scan intrusion into our vessel's systems. According to Terran military protocol, unauthorized deep scanning is considered a hostile intelligence gathering action. We are going to need you to power down your weapons and prepare for inspection. Zeruk looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes. He felt it himself. They were surrounded by 13 ships, each one more powerful than anything he had ever encountered. And according to Captain Chen, these were just standard destroyers. What else did the humans have? Commander Zeruk stared at the 13 human warships surrounding his vessel. His mind raced through his options. He could fight, but the tactical computer had already made its assessment clear. The word undefined still glowed on his screen in red letters. You could not fight what you could not calculate. Power down weapons, he ordered quietly. His crew obeyed immediately. Within seconds, the eternal vigilance went dark, showing the universal sign of surrender. Zeruk had survived 40 years in military service by knowing when he was outmatched. Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again, warmer this time. Thank you for your cooperation, Commander. We will send over an inspection team shortly. Please prepare to receive visitors. 3 hours later, Zeruk sat in his private office with Captain Chen and 2 of her officers. The humans were surprisingly small compared to most galactic species. Captain Chen barely reached the middle of his chest. But size meant nothing when those tiny beings commanded such powerful ships. I apologize for the inconvenience, Captain Chen said, sipping from a cup of something hot and dark. The smell was strange but not unpleasant. But we take security seriously. Your scan was very thorough. Too thorough. We needed to make sure you were not planning an attack. I assure you, Captain, we meant no harm, Zeruk replied. The Zathran Dominion has scanning technology that is considered the best in the galaxy. We scan every vessel we encounter. It is routine procedure. Routine. Chen repeated the word slowly. Yes, I suppose it would be. But Commander, you need to understand something. In human military doctrine, knowledge is power. Someone who knows everything about our ships can plan how to destroy them. We do not let that happen. Zeruk clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement. I understand your concern. But Captain, I must be honest with you. The data from our scan has confused my entire crew. Your ship should not be possible. The specifications violate every principle of galactic engineering that has been established over thousands of years. Captain Chen set down her cup and smiled. Would you like me to explain? Very much so. For the next hour, Captain Chen walked Zeruk through the design philosophy of human warships. She brought up holographic displays showing cutaway views of the Indomitable, explaining each system in detail. The more Zeruk learned, the more disturbed he became. The hull was not made from standard composite alloys. Instead, humans used something they called compressed matter reinforcement. They took metal and squeezed it using artificial gravity fields until it became 8 times denser than natural metal. This made the armor incredibly heavy. But humans did not care about efficiency the way other species did. They cared about survival. Most species build ships that are light and fast, Chen explained. You want to avoid getting hit. We build ships that assume they will get hit. Our armor is designed to take punishment that would destroy any other vessel. The power core was even more shocking. Most galactic ships used fusion reactors that carefully controlled the fusion process, extracting energy slowly and safely. Human reactors were different. They contained fusion reactions that burned at temperatures found inside stars. The only reason the ship did not melt was because of magnetic containment fields and cooling systems that pumped liquid metal through the entire vessel. Why would you need so much power? Zeruk asked. Because we need to run everything at once, Chen answered simply. Weapons, shields, engines, life support, sensors, computers, and all the backup systems. We never want to choose between one system or another. We want all of them. All the time. The redundant systems were perhaps the most alien concept. Chen showed Zeruk a diagram of the Indomitable's life support network. There were 8 complete life support systems, any one of which could keep the entire crew alive. If 7 of them failed, the 8th would still work. The same goes for everything, Chen said. We have backup engines, backup computers, backup power generators, backup weapons control, backup navigation. Everything important has at least 5 complete backup systems. Some critical functions have 20 or more. But why? Zeruk could not understand. Your ships must cost a fortune to build. All that redundancy makes them slower and less efficient. Why not build more ships instead of making each ship so complicated? Captain Chen's expression became serious. Her eyes grew distant as if she was remembering something painful. Because, Commander, humans know what happens when systems fail at the wrong moment. We have fought wars where a single broken part meant the death of everyone aboard a ship. We have lost thousands of people because a backup system was not there when it was needed. So now we build ships that do not fail, ever. Even if you blow half the ship apart, the other half will keep fighting. The weapons were another source of confusion. Chen explained that the Indomitable carried mass drivers that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds, missiles with artificial intelligence that could think for themselves, laser batteries that could burn through armor, and something called nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers that Zir-Uk did not even try to understand. "Why so many different weapon types?" he asked. "Because different enemies need different solutions," Chen replied. "Some enemies have good shields but weak armor. Some have thick armor but slow engines. Some are big and tough. Some are small and fast. We carry every type of weapon so we are ready for any type of enemy." When the explanation was finished, Zir-Uk sat back in his chair and tried to process everything he had learned. The humans did not build ships the way the rest of the galaxy did. They built ships like fortresses, like bunkers that could fly through space and fight back against anything that attacked them. "Captain Chen, I must ask you a direct question," Zir-Uk said slowly. "Who are you preparing to fight? Who do you expect to face that requires such extreme measures?" Chen looked him straight in the eyes. "Everyone, Commander. We prepare to fight everyone. That is how humans survived long enough to reach the stars." Before Zir-Uk could ask what that meant, his communication panel chimed. A message from Dominion High Command was coming through on the emergency channel. Zir-Uk excused himself and went to his private terminal to read it. The message was short and direct. High Command had received his initial scan data. They were convening an emergency meeting of the Galactic Coalition Council. All member species were being notified. The human military capability needed to be assessed by the entire galaxy, not just the Zathran Dominion. Zir-Uk returned to his office and shared this news with Captain Chen. He expected her to be worried or angry. Instead, she just nodded calmly. "We expected this would happen eventually," she said. "Humanity has been keeping a low profile, but we knew sooner or later someone would take a close look at our ships. It might as well be now." "You are not concerned?" Zir-Uk asked. "Should I be? We have not done anything wrong. We built ships to defend ourselves and our territory. Every species has that right." "Yes, but your ships are so much more powerful than what anyone expected. Some species might see this as a threat." Captain Chen stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "Commander, let me tell you something about humans. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other on our homeworld. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. We built weapons that could end all life on Earth, and we came very close to using them. When we finally reached space, we made a decision. Never again would we be weak. Never again would we be unprepared. Never again would we lose because we did not build something strong enough." She turned back to face Zir-Uk. "If other species see that as a threat, that is their choice. But they should know that humans do not want war. We have seen enough war to last us forever. These ships exist so that we never have to fight. Because when your enemies know you cannot be defeated, they do not attack in the first place." Later that day, after the humans had left and the Eternal Vigilance was alone again, Zir-Uk called his senior staff together. They sat around the conference table and he could see the worry on their faces. "We need to prepare a full report for High Command," he said. "Everything we learned about the human ships needs to be documented and transmitted immediately." Craven spoke up. "Commander, I have been analyzing the scan data more closely. I found something else that troubles me." "What is it?" "The human crew complement. Only 800 people on a ship that size. I calculated how this is possible. The humans use automated systems extensively. Their computers control most ship functions. The crew is there mainly for decision-making and repairs." "So?" Zir-Uk did not see why this was concerning. "So their computers must be incredibly advanced. More advanced than anything we use. If their artificial intelligence can run an entire warship with minimal crew, what else can it do? What if humans decide to build fully automated warships with no crew at all? They could build thousands of them. Tens of thousands. An unstoppable fleet that never gets tired, never makes mistakes, never hesitates." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implication. An automated fleet would be terrifying. It would fight with perfect efficiency, with no concern for casualties, with no morale to break. Tolmec, the old scanning officer, shook his head slowly. "I think we may have made a terrible mistake today." "What mistake?" Zir-Uk asked. "We poked the sleeping giant. Humanity was content to stay in their own space, minding their own business. But now we have forced them into the spotlight. Now the entire galaxy will be watching them, judging them, perhaps even fearing them. And when people are afraid, they do stupid things. They form alliances against the threat. They build bigger weapons. They start wars. Zeruk realized the old officer was right. By scanning the Indomitable, by triggering this chain of events, he might have set the galaxy on a path toward conflict with humanity. And if what Captain Chen said was true, if those destroyers were just standard vessels and humanity had many more of them, then such a conflict could only end one way. With humanity victorious and the rest of the galaxy in ruins, he looked at his crew and saw his own fear reflected in their faces. They had encountered something new in the galaxy, something powerful and dangerous, but also something that did not seem to want war. The question was, would the rest of the galaxy be smart enough to leave humanity alone, or would fear and pride lead to the worst mistake in galactic history? Zeruk began writing his report, choosing his words carefully. How he described humans could influence how the galaxy reacted. He could paint them as a threat that needed to be contained, or he could present them as a powerful potential ally. He thought about Captain Chen and her calm confidence. He thought about her words about not wanting war. He decided to trust his instincts. He would tell the truth, but he would also include a warning. Do not provoke humanity. Do not threaten them. Because these were not beings who would surrender easily. These were survivors who had learned hard lessons, and they had built ships to make sure those lessons never needed to be learned again. The Galactic Coalition Council chamber on Zenthera Prime was built to impress visitors. The massive dome stretched 200 meters across, with seats arranged in circular tiers that could hold representatives from all 200 member species. Normally, the chamber buzzed with casual conversation, trade negotiations, and minor diplomatic disputes. Today was different. Today, the chamber was silent except for the sound of heavy breathing and nervous movements. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo sat in the human delegation box, which was positioned in a middle tier, neither high nor low. Humans were still new to the council, and their seating reflected their status as recent members. Sarah was a tall woman in her 50s. With gray hair she wore in neat braids and dark eyes that missed nothing. She had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years, and she had grown used to being ignored during council sessions. Today, every eye in the chamber was fixed on her. On the central display, Commander Zeruk's scan data scrolled past. Technical specifications, power output readings, weapons analysis, all the information that had confused and frightened the Zathran crew. Sarah watched the other delegates react. She saw shock, disbelief, and growing fear on alien faces that came in every imaginable shape and color. The Velcor War Marshal stood to speak. The Velcor were an imposing species, 3 meters tall, with thick armor plating that grew naturally from their bodies. They had dominated galactic military affairs for 3,000 years, and their empire controlled 15 star systems. The War Marshal's voice boomed through the chamber, translated instantly into every language. "This data must be false," he declared. "No species advances this rapidly. The humans achieved space travel barely 2 centuries ago. Before that, they were confined to a single planet. This violates every principle of technological development we know. I demand verification." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species nodded their heads or equivalent body parts. The Velcor War Marshal continued. "Even if we assume the data is accurate, we must question human intentions. Why build such powerful warships unless you plan to use them? The humans claim they want peace, but these vessels are designed for war. I propose we demand an explanation and ask for limitations on human military expansion." Sarah stood smoothly and pressed the button that would signal her request to speak. The chamber's master of ceremonies, a floating crystalline being called a luminar, acknowledged her with a pulse of light. "Ambassador Okonkwo of Earth, you may address the council." Sarah's voice was calm and clear. "Thank you. I have listened to the concerns raised by the Honorable War Marshal of the Velcor Empire. I understand that our ship designs are unusual by galactic standards. I am authorized to provide any information the Council requires. However, I must point out that humanity has not violated any coalition laws or treaties. We have the right to defend ourselves and our territory. The strength of our defenses is our own business." "Your own business?" The Velcor War Marshal's voice dripped with contempt. "When one species suddenly reveals military power that exceeds all others combined, it becomes everyone's business. You could threaten the entire balance of power in the galaxy." "Could but won't," Sarah replied simply. Humanity seeks peace and cooperation. Our ships are defensive in nature. Defensive? A new voice joined the debate. It came from the Hegnor delegation. The Hegnor were a proud warrior species, reptilian, in appearance, with a culture built around honor and combat prowess. Their representative, a scarred veteran named Krathnor, stood with his claws gripping the railing of his box. "I have read the specifications of your vessels," Krathnor said. "Those are not defensive weapons. Those are weapons built to destroy opponents completely and without mercy. As a warrior, I recognize another warrior's tools." Sarah smiled slightly. "You are correct, honored Krathnor. Our weapons are built to destroy threats, but we only use them when attacked. Humanity has been in space for 50 years. In that time, have we invaded anyone? Have we conquered any worlds? Have we started any wars?" The chamber fell silent. The answer was obvious. Humanity had kept to itself, developing its own worlds and avoiding conflicts with neighbors. "Actions speak louder than words," Sarah continued. "We have powerful ships, yes, but we have not used them to threaten anyone. Does that not prove our peaceful intentions? Or it proves you were waiting," the Velcor War Marshal shot back. "Building strength before revealing yourselves. It is a classic strategy. Appear weak until you are strong, then strike." Sarah sighed. This was going nowhere. The other species were afraid, and fear made people irrational. She needed to change the conversation. "If the Council has doubts about our capabilities or our intentions, I propose a demonstration," she said clearly. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates spoke to each other in dozens of languages. The Luminar Master of Ceremonies pulsed several times before order was restored. "What kind of demonstration?" the Luminar asked, its crystalline voice chiming like bells. "A practical test," Sarah explained. "Provide us with a target and we will show exactly what our ships can do. That way, there will be no more speculation or fear of the unknown. Everyone will see the truth with their own eyes." Krathnor of the Hegnor spoke up immediately. "I accept this challenge. The Hegnor have a decommissioned battlecruiser, the Deathless Honor. It was one of our most powerful warships, retired after 60 years of service. It destroyed an entire invasion fleet single-handed during the Kreevil conflict. If your human destroyer can damage it significantly, we will accept that your power is real." Sarah nodded. "Agreed. The UESS Indomitable will arrive at whatever location you specify in 3 days. We will provide your demonstration." The Council debated for another hour before agreeing to the terms. The test would take place in the Gamma 7 system, a Dead Star system used for military exercises. Every species was invited to send observer ships. Media organizations scrambled to position their recording drones. Within hours, the entire galaxy knew that humanity was about to prove its military strength, or be exposed as builders of ships that looked impressive, but could not actually fight. 3 days later, thousands of ships gathered in the Gamma 7 system. Observation vessels from every major species maintained a safe distance from the testing area. Media drones filled the space between them, ready to broadcast what happened next to billions of watching citizens across the galaxy. The Deathless Honor hung in the void like a monument to Hegnor engineering. It was a massive vessel 2 kilometers long with armor plating half a meter thick. Its shields, even in a decommissioned state, were legendary. During its service life, the Deathless Honor had survived bombardment from 50 ships at once. Its hull showed the scars of dozens of battles, each one a story of victory. The UESS Indomitable arrived precisely on time, emerging from faster-than-light travel with the characteristic ripple of bent space. Compared to the massive battlecruiser, the human destroyer looked small, vulnerable. Several observers laughed. How could such a small ship threaten something so massive? Captain Chen's voice broadcast on all channels, clear and professional. "This is Captain Maria Chen of the UESS Indomitable. We are ready to begin the demonstration. Single shot, 30% yield mass driver cannon. Please confirm all observer vessels are at safe distance." The Luminar Master of Ceremonies, present in an observation ship, confirmed that everyone was clear of the danger zone. "Beginning demonstration in 10 seconds, Captain Chen announced. The countdown seemed to last forever. 10, 9, 8. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched their screens, 7, 6, 5, diplomats. Held their breath. 4, 3, 2, military. Commanders leaned forward in their chairs. 1. A flash of light erupted from the Indomitable's main cannon. The projectile was invisible to the naked eye, just a slug of super-dense matter moving at an incredible fraction of the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the Deathless Honor in just over 2 seconds. The impact was devastating beyond all predictions. The battlecruiser's shields, which had withstood sustained fleet bombardment, simply overloaded. They flashed once, twice, then collapsed completely. The energy feedback from their failure caused secondary explosions across the shield generators. But that was just the beginning. The projectile hit the armor like a fist from an angry god. The kinetic energy was so immense that the laws of physics became weapons themselves. The armor did not just crack or dent. It vaporized. A hole 3 meters wide appeared in the battlecruiser's hull, and the projectile continued through, punching out the other side. But the damage did not stop there. The kinetic energy transfer caused a shock wave to ripple through the entire structure of the ship. Metal screamed. Support beams snapped. The Deathless Honor, a ship that had survived 60 years of combat, broke apart like a toy. The entire spine of the vessel split in two. Atmosphere rushed out from 1,000 breaches. Secondary explosions blossomed across its length as power systems overloaded and fuel reserves ignited. Within 10 seconds, the legendary battlecruiser was not a ship anymore. It was debris, tumbling through space in thousands of pieces, each one glowing red from the heat of its own destruction. The silence in the observation fleet was absolute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stared at what remained of the Deathless Honor, unable to process what they had just witnessed. Captain Chen's voice broke the silence. Demonstration complete. As stated, that was a single shot at 30% yield. The Indomitable carries 8 such cannons and sufficient ammunition for sustained combat operations. Are there any questions? There were no questions. What could anyone ask? The evidence was floating in space before them, undeniable and terrifying. Within hours, the galactic economy began to react. The Velcor Empire stock market crashed as investors realized that Velcor military superiority was a myth. Every defense contract in the galaxy was suddenly worthless. Weapons manufacturers watched their stock prices fall. Insurance companies refused to issue policies on military vessels, claiming the risk was now incalculable. Border disputes that had simmered for decades suddenly went cold. Nobody wanted to risk military action when humanity might decide to intervene. Trade negotiations shifted as species realized that economic relationships with humanity might be the best form of insurance against future conflicts. In the council chamber, Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo stood to address the assembled delegates once more. The chamber was packed now. Every species wanted to hear what humanity would say next. Members of the Galactic Coalition, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. You have seen what our ships can do. I will not pretend they are weak. I will not apologize for their strength. Humanity learned long ago that the universe can be a dangerous place. We learned that lesson on our own world, through centuries of conflict and pain. She paused, letting her words sink in. But we also learned another lesson. We learned that strength without wisdom is just destruction. We learned that the greatest victory is the one you never have to fight for. We learned that peace is not the absence of capability, but the choice not to use it. Humanity seeks only peace and cooperation with all species, Sarah continued. We offer our friendship freely. We offer our protection to those who need it. We offer our knowledge and our strength in service of a safer, more secure galaxy. But make no mistake, we also offer a warning. We will defend ourselves, we will defend our allies, and we will not hesitate to act if threatened. She sat down and the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, delegates began to whisper to each other. Alliances were being reconsidered. Diplomatic strategies were being rewritten. The galaxy had just learned that it had a new apex predator, and everyone needed to adjust to this new reality. In the Hegner delegation box, Crathnor stood and placed his clawed hand over his heart in a gesture of respect. The Hegner acknowledged the strength of humanity. We were wrong to doubt you. We would be honored to learn from warriors such as yourselves. Other species began to follow suit. Not everyone, but enough to show that humanity had earned respect through demonstration rather than words. The galaxy was learning and the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the humans. Dr. Thelrick stood in the Museum of Human Military History in New Chicago, feeling more disturbed with each passing hour. The Galactic Coalition had sent a scientific commission to Earth demanding answers. They wanted to know how humanity had achieved such advanced military technology in such a short time. They expected to find evidence of ancient alien artifacts. They expected to discover that humans had stolen technology from some long-dead civilization. They expected anything except the truth. The truth was far worse than anyone had imagined. Thelrick was a xenoanthropologist, one of the galaxy's leading experts on how species develop and evolve. He had studied 200 different civilizations, from their earliest Stone Age beginnings to their eventual spacefaring achievements. He thought he understood how intelligent species progressed, but humans were different. Humans were wrong. Everything about their development violated the normal patterns. The human guide, a young woman named Dr. Emma Rodriguez, walked beside him through the exhibit halls. She seemed cheerful and helpful, completely unaware of how horrifying Thelrick found everything she was showing him. This section covers early human warfare, Emma explained, gesturing to displays showing primitive weapons. These stone axes are about 2 million years old. Humans have been creating tools for killing since before we were technically human. Thelrick looked at the crude stone implements. Most species developed tools for hunting animals. They created spears for defense against predators, but they did not focus on tools for killing their own kind until much later in their evolution. Humans seem to have started with violence. 2 million years of warfare? Thelrick asked carefully. Oh, much longer if you count our pre-human ancestors, Emma said happily. But these are the first weapons we can definitely say were made by early humans. Come on, the next section shows how warfare evolved. The next 3 hours were a nightmare of education. Emma walked Thelrick through 10,000 years of human military innovation. She showed him bronze weapons that were stronger than stone, iron weapons that were sharper than bronze, steel weapons that were sharper still. Each generation of humans found new ways to kill more efficiently. But it was not just the weapons that disturbed Thelrick. It was the scale. Humans did not fight in small groups like most primitive species. They organized themselves into armies of thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. They developed complex strategies and tactics. They built fortifications and siege engines. They created entire philosophies about how to wage war. This section is particularly interesting, Emma said, leading him to a display about something called the Mongol Empire. In the 13th century, the Mongols conquered the largest continuous land empire in human history. They were incredibly efficient warriors. They could coordinate armies across thousands of kilometers using nothing but horse riders carrying messages. Thelrick read the information panels with growing horror. The Mongols had killed an estimated 40 million people during their conquests. 40 million. Some species never produced 40 million individuals in their entire history. Humans had killed that many in just a few generations of warfare. Surely this was the worst of human violence, Thelrick asked hopefully. Emma laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a genuine laugh of amusement. Oh no, Doctor. The Mongols were bad, but humans got much more creative about killing as technology advanced. Come see the gunpowder section. Gunpowder. Humans had learned to weaponize chemical explosions. They built cannons that could destroy castle walls. They created muskets that made armor obsolete. They developed rifles with greater and greater range and accuracy. And they organized themselves into nation-states that could field armies of millions. The First World War, Emma said, stopping at a massive display filled with photographs and artifacts, lasted from 1914 to 1918. It involved most of the major nations on Earth. Approximately 20 million people died. It was called the War to End All Wars. But it did not end wars, Thelrick said quietly, reading ahead to the next exhibit. No, Emma agreed, her cheerful tone finally fading slightly. 21 years later, we started the Second World War. That one killed between 70 and 85 million people. We developed even more efficient ways of killing. Mechanized warfare, aerial bombardment, industrial-scale death camps. We turned war into an industry. Thelrick felt his 3 stomachs churning. This could not be real. No species did this to itself. No intelligent civilization spent its entire history perfecting the art of self-destruction. But the evidence was everywhere, carefully preserved and displayed for educational purposes. Why? Thelrick finally asked. Why did humans spend so much time and energy on war? Most species experience conflicts, yes, but they also develop art and philosophy and science. You seem to have focused primarily on killing. Emma shook her head. We developed all those other things too, Doctor. Some of our greatest art came from wartime. Some of our most important philosophical questions arose from the horror of what we did to each other. And science. War drove scientific advancement faster than anything else. We needed better weapons, so we invented better metallurgy. We needed to communicate across battlefields, so we developed radio. We needed to calculate artillery trajectories, so we built computers. She led him to another section, and Thelrix wished she would stop. But he was a scientist. He needed to see this through, no matter how disturbing it was. This is the atomic age, Emma said, her voice now completely serious. In 1945, humanity successfully split the atom and turned it into a weapon. These are photographs from Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two cities where we used atomic bombs. Thelrix looked at the images of destroyed cities, of shadows burned into walls where people had stood when they were vaporized. He looked at pictures of survivors, their bodies covered in radiation burns. He read the casualty estimates. Over 200,000 people killed instantly or dying slowly from radiation poisoning. You built weapons that could destroy your own species, Thelrix said, his voice barely a whisper. Why? Because we were at war, Emma replied simply. The bombs ended the Second World War. They probably saved millions of lives by preventing a full-scale invasion of Japan. But yes, we built weapons capable of destroying ourselves, and then we built thousands more. The next display showed the Cold War. Two massive human nations armed with tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, all pointed at each other. Enough destructive power to render Earth uninhabitable several times over. For 50 years, humans lived under the threat of total annihilation. For 50 years, they maintained this balance of terror, where one mistake could mean the end of everything. How did you survive? Thelrix asked. How did you not destroy yourselves? Emma smiled sadly. Luck, mostly. And the fear of what we had created. We called it mutually assured destruction. If one side launched their weapons, the other side would launch theirs. Both sides would be destroyed. Nobody could win, so nobody launched. We were smart enough to be terrified of our own weapons. And this is why your warships are built the way they are, Thelrix said, understanding finally dawning. You assume everything will fail because you have seen everything fail. You build redundancy because you know that one failed system can mean death. You build overwhelming firepower because you know what it takes to truly destroy an enemy. Exactly, Emma confirmed. Our warships are not built by species who spent thousands of years developing slowly and peacefully. They are built by species who spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves, learning hard lessons in blood and fire. Every human warship carries the memory of every mistake we ever made. Every battle we lost because we were not prepared enough, not strong enough, not ruthless enough when we needed to be. Thelrix spent another week on Earth, visiting more museums, talking to more historians and military experts. He learned about submarine warfare in Earth's oceans, where vessels had to survive crushing pressure and potential destruction at any moment. He learned about aerial combat, where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. He learned about space programs that were originally developed to deliver nuclear weapons to the other side of the planet. Everything humans had built was forged in conflict. Their entire civilization was a monument to survival against their own worst instincts. On his last day on Earth, Thelrix met with a human military engineer named Colonel James Park. Park was responsible for designing defensive systems for human warships. I need to understand your design philosophy, Thelrix said. Why do you build ships that seem so paranoid? So over-engineered? Colonel Park leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment before answering. Doctor, have you ever been on a submarine? A real military submarine operating in deep water? No. I served on submarines for 15 years before I moved to spaceship design. A submarine is a metal tube that operates in an environment that wants to crush it. Every single system on a submarine needs to work perfectly, because if it fails, everyone dies. We do not have the luxury of half measures or good enough. We build submarines that can survive having half the hull torn open. We build them with enough redundancy that even catastrophic damage still leaves options. Park stood and walked to a window overlooking a shipyard where a new human cruiser was under construction. When we started building warships for space, we brought that same philosophy with us. Space is even more hostile than the ocean depths, and unlike Earth's oceans, space has potential enemies. So we build ships that assume they will take damage. We build ships that can survive losing half their systems. We build ships that can keep fighting even when everything has gone wrong. But why so much firepower? Thelrix asked. Your weapons exceed anything the galaxy has seen. Because we know what war looks like, Park replied quietly. Most galactic species have small skirmishes, border disputes, short conflicts that end with negotiated settlements. Humans have fought wars that consumed entire continents for years at a time. We have fought wars where victory meant total destruction of the enemy, and defeat meant extinction. We do not build weapons for small fights. We build weapons for wars of survival, and we make sure we have enough weapons to win those wars, because losing is not an option. Thelrix returned to his ship that evening and began writing his report for the Galactic Coalition. He chose his words carefully, knowing that his report would influence how the galaxy viewed humanity for generations to come. He wrote about human history, about their 10,000 years of constant warfare. He wrote about their technological development, driven by the need to kill more efficiently. He wrote about their near extinction during the nuclear age, and how they had survived by learning to fear their own power. But most importantly, he wrote a warning. Humanity did not build a military despite being peaceful, he wrote. They built a military because they know, intimately and personally, the cost of being unprepared for war. Every human warship is not a symbol of aggression. It is a monument to their darkest memories. It is a promise they made to themselves. Never again will they be weak. Never again will they be unprepared. Never again will they lose because they did not build something strong enough. He concluded his report with a single recommendation. The Galactic Coalition must decide whether to view humanity as a threat or as an ally. But whatever we decide, we must never forget what we have learned. Humans are not dangerous because they want war. They are dangerous because they understand war better than any species in the galaxy. They have practiced it longer, suffered through it more deeply, and learned its lessons more thoroughly than anyone else. If we must have warriors in our galaxy, we should be grateful those warriors are on our side. When his report was distributed throughout the coalition, it changed everything. Species stopped seeing human warships as threats and started seeing them as insurance. The galaxy began to understand that they had not discovered conquerors. They had discovered survivors. 3 months after the demonstration in the Gamma-7 system, the galaxy had settled into a new reality. The Galactic Coalition Council had restructured its security arrangements. Trade routes had been renegotiated, defense budgets had been recalculated, and humanity, once ignored as newcomers with primitive technology, now found that every species in the galaxy wanted to talk to them. Ambassador Sarah Okonkwo sat in more meetings than she could count. Species wanted defense treaties. They wanted to purchase human technology. They wanted human instructors to train their military forces. Some wanted reassurance that humanity would not use its power to conquer. Others wanted promises that humanity would help defend them if threatened. Sarah was patient with all of them. She explained over and over that humanity sought only peace and cooperation, that human warships existed for defense, not conquest, that Earth's violent past had taught them the true cost of war, and they had no desire to repeat those lessons. Most species seemed to believe her. The change in galactic attitudes was remarkable. Border disputes that had threatened to become wars suddenly found peaceful solutions. Nobody wanted to fight when humanity might intervene. The mere presence of human destroyers on patrol in neutral space became a guarantee of peace. But not everyone was convinced. And not everyone was happy with the new balance of power. The Krell swarm had existed on the edges of Coalition space for 200 years. They were a hive mind species. Billions of individual creatures controlled by a central intelligence. They had no interest in peaceful coexistence. They wanted resources, territory, and biomass to feed their endless reproduction. For generations, they had tested coalition defenses, raiding frontier colonies and retreating when faced with strong opposition. The Krell understood calculations. They knew how to measure acceptable losses against potential gains. They had observed galactic military capabilities for decades. They knew exactly how many ships they needed to overwhelm any defense fleet. They were patient predators, waiting for the right moment to strike. When news of human military power reached the Krell, they did not panic like other species. The Krell analyzed the data coldly. Yes, human ships were powerful, but they were also few in number. Humans only had a few hundred warships spread across their territory. The Krell could field thousands of bioships. Numbers could overcome technology. The Krell had destroyed more powerful opponents before by simple mass attack. The Krell decided to test this theory. New Viridian was a frontier colony world in the Theta sector, home to 4.3 million beings from a dozen different species. It was not a wealthy world or a strategic location, but it was vulnerable, far from major fleet bases, protected by only a small defense force, the perfect target for a Krell raid. 50 Krell bioships entered the Theta sector, moving in perfect synchronization. They were living vessels, grown rather than built, with weapons that fired acid and organic missiles that hunted targets like predators. The Krell had used these ships to terrorize the frontier for generations. They expected another easy raid, another chance to gather resources and retreat before serious opposition arrived. They did not expect the UESS Indomitable, Captain Maria Chen, now promoted to Commodore after the Gamma 7 demonstration, was conducting a routine patrol with 3rd Fleet when the distress call came from New Viridian. The colony's defense platforms were being overwhelmed. Civilians were evacuating to underground shelters. The small defense fleet was fighting bravely but was outnumbered 10-1. Set course for New Viridian, maximum speed, Chen ordered immediately. Notify Admiral Nakamura that we are engaging enemy forces. Request reinforcements but do not wait for authorization. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment. Every human crew trained constantly, running simulations of every possible combat scenario. The Indomitable had been in service for 3 years and had never fired its weapons in actual combat, but the crew was ready. The destroyer dropped out of faster-than-light travel between the Krell swarm and the planet. The Krell ships immediately turned to face this new threat. 50 bioships against 1 human destroyer. The odds seemed overwhelming, but the Krell did not understand human combat doctrine. Weapons free, Chen said calmly. Target the lead elements. Full spread all batteries. The Indomitable opened fire with everything it had. Mass driver rounds crossed the distance at a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles with artificial intelligence guidance systems launched by the dozens. Laser batteries painted the space ahead with coherent light. And for the first time in actual combat, a human warship deployed nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. A nuclear warhead detonated in the center of the Krell formation. The explosion itself was not the weapon. Instead, the energy from the explosion channeled through dozens of disposable laser rods, creating focused beams of X-rays that sliced through Krell bioships like a blade through paper. 20 ships died in less than 3 seconds. The Krell swarm adapted quickly. They were a hive mind, capable of learning and adjusting tactics instantly. They scattered, trying to surround the Indomitable and attack from multiple angles. It was a good strategy. Against any other species, it would have worked. But human point defense systems were designed to handle exactly this situation. Lasers tracking hundreds of targets per second created a defensive sphere around the destroyer. Missiles that tried to penetrate the defense were destroyed before they could impact. Acid projectiles vaporized before they could reach the hull. Chen watched her tactical display with satisfaction. The Indomitable's systems were performing exactly as designed. Launch counter missiles pattern Delta. Target their command nodes. The Krell ships operated as a collective, but they still needed coordination vessels that directed the swarm. Human sensors had identified these command nodes within seconds of engagement. Missiles specifically designed to hunt the most dangerous targets raced toward them. 5 command vessels died. The Krell swarm lost cohesion for a moment. Individual ships trying to coordinate on their own. That moment was all Chen needed. Fire all mass drivers. Maximize rate of fire. 8 cannons opened fire in rapid sequence. Each shot carried the kinetic energy of a small asteroid impact. Krell bioships did not have shields like galactic vessels. They relied on thick organic armor and rapid healing, but you could not heal from being blown apart by sheer kinetic force. The battle lasted 17 minutes from first shot to last. When the rest of 3rd Fleet arrived, they found the Indomitable drifting slowly through a field of Krell debris. The destroyer had taken some damage. Acid burns scarred its hull. Several point defense lasers were offline. But the ship was functional, the crew was alive, and New Viridian was safe. Most importantly, not a single Krell bioship escaped. The swarm that had terrorized the frontier for 2 centuries had learned a new fact. Humans were apex predators, and apex predators did not show mercy to threats. The news of the battle reached the Galactic Coalition within hours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Krell, who had never retreated from any territory they claimed, withdrew from all frontier zones. Their hive mind had calculated a new truth. Humans could be beaten by superior numbers perhaps, but the cost would be unacceptable. Better to avoid human space entirely. Other aggressive species took note. Pirates who had operated with near impunity suddenly found their hideouts exposed and destroyed by human strike forces. Border raiders learned that attacking colonies under human protection was suicide. Slowly, carefully, the frontier became safer than it had been in centuries. The Galactic Coalition convened again, and this time the tone was very different. Ambassador Okonkwo stood before the council with a proposal that would change everything. Humanity offers a mutual defense initiative, she announced. We will provide military technology, training, and fleet support to any coalition member who requests it. In return, we ask for scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, and access to resources we need for continued ship production. The proposal was not charity. Humanity needed resources from across the galaxy to maintain its fleet. Rare elements, advanced materials, scientific knowledge that other species had developed over thousands of years. A fair trade, human military expertise for galactic knowledge. The debate lasted 3 days. Some species worried about becoming dependent on human protection. Others feared that human military instructors would learn too much about their capabilities. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. The galaxy had seen what happened when the Krell challenged humanity. Nobody wanted to be on the wrong side of that equation. Over the following year, human engineers worked alongside alien scientists across the galaxy. They designed hybrid defense systems that combined human durability with alien efficiency. They developed new ship classes that incorporated the best ideas from multiple species. They trained coalition crews in human tactics, teaching them how to survive against overwhelming odds. The results were remarkable. Coalition ships became tougher, more resilient, harder to destroy. Casualty rates in frontier skirmishes dropped dramatically. Species that had been victims for generations learned to defend themselves effectively. Commander Zir-Ook, now promoted to admiral and serving as liaison between the Zathran Dominion and human defense forces, found himself working closely with Commodore Chen. They spent many hours discussing military strategy and ship design. One day, during a quiet moment, Zir-Ook asked the question that had haunted him since that first scan. Your people have seen such horror, he said quietly. Your own history is filled with war and death and near extinction. How do you maintain hope? How do you build for peace when you know so much about war? Chen looked out the viewport at the stars. She was silent for a long moment before answering. Because we remember what we survived, Admiral. We destroyed ourselves and came back. We built weapons of annihilation and chose not to use them. We reached the stars not because it was easy, but because staying on Earth meant staying enemies. Every human ship carries our history, the bad and the good. We are peaceful, but we are not pacifists. There is a difference. What is the difference? Zir-Ook asked. Pacifists refuse to fight because they believe violence is always wrong, Chen explained. We refuse to fight because we know exactly what violence costs. We have paid that price too many times. But if we must fight, if there is no other choice, we will do so with complete commitment. Because half measures in war just mean more suffering, longer conflicts, more death. If we must fight, we fight to win quickly and decisively. That is the kindest thing we can do. Zir-Ook thought about this for a long time. He had been a military officer for 50 years, but he had never heard war described this way. Humans viewed military power not as glory or honor or strength, but as a terrible burden they carried to protect others from experiencing what they had experienced. The galaxy continued to change. Former enemies became cautious allies. Border disputes were settled through negotiation rather than violence. The coalition fleet, now incorporating human technology and tactics, became a true defensive force rather than a collection of individual national fleets that barely cooperated. And throughout it all, human destroyers patrolled the frontier, not as conquerors or oppressors, but as guardians. The ships that had once terrified the galaxy now served as its shield. The species that nearly destroyed itself had become the protector others called upon when danger threatened. In the depths of space, scanners from 1,000 species continuously monitored human vessels, but they no longer scanned to assess threats. They scanned to learn, to understand, to incorporate human innovations into their own designs. The data that had once shown an impossible ship now showed the future of galactic defense. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. When those scanners hit a human warship, they detected more than weapons and armor. They detected wisdom born from suffering. They detected strength tempered by restraint. They detected a species that understood war so well that they were willing to do almost anything to avoid it. But most importantly, they detected commitment. Humanity had made a promise not just to themselves but to the entire galaxy. They would never again be weak. They would never again be unprepared. And they would never again stand by while others faced the kind of darkness that had once consumed their own world. The Indomitable and her sister ships continued their patrols, silent guardians watching over a galaxy that had finally learned a simple truth. Peace was not the absence of military power. Peace was the choice not to use that power except when absolutely necessary. And humanity, with all its terrible history and hard-earned wisdom, had made that choice. The galaxy was safer because of it, and the species that had once scanned a human warship in curiosity now looked to those same ships with gratitude. The humans had shown them something remarkable. They had shown them that the strongest warriors could also be the most dedicated peacekeepers. And that made all the difference.